My brothers, have you ever stopped to think that the greatest mystery in the history of mankind may be before our eyes at this very moment? That's that. While many live as if nothing will change, the sky is already silent. The trumpets are preparing to sound, and the last seal is about to be broken. It is not a theory. It is not a legend. It is the revelation that crosses centuries and comes to us as an urgent call. And let me tell you, this subject is not for everyone. It requires attention, discernment, and courage to face the truth. But if you are here, it is because God has a purpose in showing you something that few can see. The time has come to understand the signs, to notice the approaching judgment, and to live in a way that prepares you for eternity. So before we dive into this deep study, I want to ask you something simple. Subscribe now to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you don't miss out on any content that will open your eyes to the mystery that the world prefers to ignore. Here we go beyond the surface, and you will understand things that many are even afraid to talk about. Just imagine, while some are distracted, you will have access to the revelation that transforms fear into hope, tribulation into strength, and silence into clarity. We are not talking about passing curiosity, but something that impacts your life, your family, and even the way you face the future. It is knowledge that is not easily found, but that can change the course of your history. So, my brothers, stay with me until the end, because what you will discover here is not just information, it is preparation. Eternity is not a distant idea. It has already begun to move, and the last seal is about to be broken. There are silences that are not empty, but full of meaning. Revelation describes an instant when the whole sky falls silent, as if all creation holds its breath before the mystery that hangs on the throne. This silence is not one of absence, but of expectation, charged with the coming revelation. It's like the dramatic interval before the gavel falls on the courtroom, a harbinger that something definitive is about to happen. This moment shows us that even silence can be a judgment. In real life, when someone waits for the result of an exam or the answer to an important request, the pause becomes unbearable. It seems that time freezes, but it is in this space of stillness that we mature. The sky also experienced this, a heavy silence full of eternity, as if each star was waiting for the seal to be broken. The interesting thing is that silence is not just waiting, but preparation. Anyone who has ever watched an orchestra knows, before the first note echoes, there is that second of stillness that increases the expectation. So too, in the heavenly setting, pause was necessary to highlight the sound that would soon follow. Isn't it curious how the absence of sound makes the trumpet, when it sounds, have even more force? This heavenly picture teaches us something practical. Stopping is not a waste of time. We often run away from silence with constant distractions, television, social media, noise around us. But it is in silence that clarity, revelation, and even redemption arise. Taking time to silence the soul is like tuning the instruments before the music. Those who learn to listen to emptiness better understand the voice that breaks from it. And that's exactly how the sky positioned itself. An instant of stillness before a rumble that would mark history. The last seal, when opened, not only brought silence, but set the stage for the most striking sound that ever traveled the heavens and the earth, the sounding of the trumpets, announcing that judgment was in motion. When the silence is broken, it is not with any sound, but with the echo of the trumpets. They do not play by chance. Each note announces judgment, revelation, and tribulation on earth. Imagine being in a valley and suddenly hearing the sound of a horn that resounds in the mountains. It is impossible to ignore. Such is the impact of these trumpets, signs that no one can pretend not to hear. These touches are not mere warnings, but the materialization of the last seal being unfolded. It's like opening an ancient vault and releasing a piece of content that has been sealed for centuries. Every sound is a revelation of the divine mystery, like pages of a book being turned before humanity. Heaven, which was silent, now speaks in a firm and thunderous voice, showing that eternity is closer than we imagine. The curious thing is how trumpets have always been used to mark decisive moments. In antiquity, they gathered warriors, announced kings, called the people to battles or celebrations. Today, we can associate it with signs that change the course of our lives, an unexpected piece of news, a global event, or even a personal experience that awakens us to something greater. All of these are echoes, little reminders that there is judgment approaching. Each trumpet is also a chance to awaken. How many times do we ignore the signs around us, preferring to believe that everything will remain the same? But it is exactly when the sounds get more intense that we need to open our eyes. It's like a fire alarm. No one likes the noise, but it exists to save lives. Discomfort is precisely what calls us to redemption and repentance. And as these trumpets echo, the human heart cannot remain indifferent. Creation trembles, kingdoms stir, and tribulation begins to take shape. It is not just a heavenly noise, but an irresistible summons, a call that pierces the soul. From silence to rumble, the plot advances, and the voice of the trumpets makes way for the cry that rises from earth to heaven. The sound of trumpets does not echo alone. He finds an answer in the cry that rises from the earth, like voices of supplication that pierce the heavens. It is impressive to imagine. Every prayer, every tear, every groan of faith is not lost in the wind, but is gathered before the throne. This mystery shows us that nothing is forgotten. Even the faintest whispers become part of the judgment and the coming redemption. In Revelation's vision, the incense burning before God symbolizes these accumulated prayers, like a rare perfume that fills the throne room. It is a powerful image because it shows that human voices participate in eternity. Think about when you walk into a room and smell a striking aroma. It changes the environment without you realizing where it's coming from. So is the cry of the saints, pervading the divine presence. It is curious how, in practical life, we underestimate the power of prayer. Many treat it as a last resort, when in fact it is the first instrument of revelation. Imagine a father who keeps letters from his children over the years. Every word, even the simplest, has sentimental value. God does the same, but in an infinite way. He collects each prayer and makes it a part of his eternal plan. This collective cry reveals that tribulation is not only punishment, but also response. Response to the cry of those who ask for justice, of those who suffer persecution, of those who cry out for redemption. Incense before God is the reminder that He does not ignore human suffering. When we think He is silent, in fact, He is putting each prayer together to turn it into a fire that purifies and a judgment that delivers. And as the trumpets sound and the incense rises, the scene gains even more intensity. The altar becomes the stage for intervention, and what seemed distant begins to move in a palpable way. The cry of the saints, united with the celestial echo, prepares the instant when fire and answer will descend upon the earth, showing that history is not only of men, but also of the divine hand that acts. When the incense rises and the clamor reaches the throne, something great happens. The last seal opens as a key that unlocks the mystery of the story. It is at this point that we realize that nothing that seemed hidden was out of control. God's plans, hitherto veiled, begin to reveal themselves with surprising clarity. It's like when someone turns on the light in a dark room. Everything was there all along, just hidden by the shadows. This revelation reminds us that life is full of enigmas that only become clearer with time. How many times have you wondered why something painful happened? Sometimes the answer doesn't come immediately, but arrives in parts, like pieces of a puzzle that only make sense when they come together. Such are the seals of revelation, fragments of the divine plot that in the end point to redemption and eternity. The amazing thing is that the hidden plan is not only about judgment, but also about grace. There is a fine line between tribulation and redemption, because even in suffering, there is a call to turn to the Creator. It is like a teacher who gives a difficult test, not to punish, but to train. The revelation shows that pain is not without purpose, but is part of something much greater, the construction of eternal character. In practice, this perception changes the way we face our own battles. When we face loss, crisis, or even injustice, we can choose to look only at the chaos or see that there is a hidden plan behind it. It's like reading the biography of someone successful. We see that before glory, there were failures, rejections, and falls. The difference is in understanding that these chapters are also part of history. And so, when the last seal is opened, what seemed to be a secret becomes a revelation. What was once silence turns into clarity. What was a mystery takes shape before the heavens and the earth. But this revelation does not stop at the throne. It overflows into action, and the angels move, bringing with them fire from the altar that descends in response to humanity, inaugurating a new level of judgment and purification. From the revelation that opens before the throne, a scene of almost palpable intensity emerges. An angel approaches the altar, collects fire, and throws it on the earth. This gesture is not only symbolic, but a milestone of intervention. It is as if heaven said, "The time has come to answer." The fire of the altar brings not only destruction, but purification, separating what is false from what is eternal. This detail is fascinating because the altar has always been a place of encounter between the human and the divine. In the past, sacrifices were offered here, and the fire represented God's acceptance or rejection. Now, in Revelation, that fire returns, but in a cosmic way, descending as judgment and redemption at the same time. It is the same flame that warms and illuminates, but it also consumes all that is impure. We can bring this into practical life. How often do we feel that difficult situations burn like fire? However, many of them do not come to destroy us, but to purify. Think of someone who goes through a financial crisis. The heat of difficulty may seem unbearable, but discipline, wisdom, and new opportunities can be born from it. Fire, when it comes from the altar, always transforms, even when it hurts. The most impressive thing is that this intervention is not just a reaction, but a fulfillment of something that has been prepared for a long time. Just like a farmer who, after months of cultivation, finally reaps the fruits, judgment is the outcome of a lawsuit. The prayers, the cries, the silence, and the trumpets converge at this instant when the angel acts, showing that nothing happens outside the established time. And when this fire touches the earth, the scenario intensifies. What seemed only distant takes concrete form: thunder, lightning, earthquakes. It is not an empty spectacle, but the prelude to the great tribulation that will begin to take shape with more force. The altar, which was once a symbol of intercession, now also becomes a sign of inevitable judgment. When the fire from the altar descends and shakes the earth, something even deeper begins to emerge. The clear distinction between those who belong to the Lord and those who have rejected His covenant. The seal that protects God's servants becomes evident as an invisible mark that separates life and damnation. It is in this contrast that the judgment reveals its most serious face, the impossibility of neutrality. Either one walks in the light of redemption, or one remains in the shadow of the beast. This moment carries a mystery that crosses generations. There has always been a dividing line, but now it is laid out before everyone. It's like an electrical storm. The lightning illuminates the dark sky and reveals what was once hidden. Thus, those who have taken refuge in God appear as preserved, while those who have scoffed at the truth are exposed to the growing tribulation. The revelation leaves no room for masks. In practical life, this reminds us that choices reveal who we really are. It's no use just talking about faith if attitudes go in the opposite direction. It's like an athlete. No matter how much he declares to love the sport, it is in daily training and discipline that his identity is confirmed. In the same way, the Lord's seal is not a mere title, but evidence of real belonging, reflected in attitudes that point to eternity. This separation also confronts us with the need for firmness. In times of pressure, it will be increasingly difficult to remain neutral. Imagine a company in crisis. Either the employee remains loyal to the leader's vision or seeks easy shortcuts that compromise everything. So it is with faith. The moment of the seal makes it clear who remains under divine protection and who prefers to follow the beast and its false brightness. And while this division becomes inescapable, the celestial narrative does not slow down. The fire, the trumpets, the silence that turned into a rumble, everything converges to intensify the events. The separation marks the prelude to something even more dramatic, the Great Tribulation, when spiritual forces will manifest on a scale never seen before, revealing the urgency of the decision that each heart must make. When separation is established, the land is no longer the same. What once seemed just isolated signs begins to intensify, like the harbinger of a storm darkening the horizon. The Great Tribulation does not come suddenly. It announces itself with thunder shaking and sounds that echo from eternity. It is the prelude to a reality that can no longer be ignored. Judgment is already in motion. This initial phase shows that God does not act in a chaotic way, but in an orderly way. Every seal, every trumpet, every silence has a purpose. It's like a symphony where even the pause has value, preparing for the explosion of the following notes. The approaching tribulation is not a historical coincidence, but part of the mystery revealed. A script already written so that no one is deceived about the fate of humanity. In practical life, this teaches us to identify signs before the total crisis. A marriage does not fall apart overnight. The signs appear little by little. Withdrawal, lack of dialogue, silence full of tension. An economy does not collapse suddenly. The indicators give alerts. This is also the case in the spiritual scenario. Foreshadowings are everywhere, but it takes sensitivity to see. This prelude also serves as a call to preparation. Many prefer to live as if nothing is happening, like distracted passengers on an airplane when the pilot announces turbulence. But those who listen carefully know that it is time to hold back. Spiritually, this means putting down roots, nurturing faith, cultivating prayer. These are simple practices that work like seatbelts in the face of what is to come. And as the events pile up, the atmosphere becomes denser, almost suffocating. It is not just natural or political events, but a tribulation that reflects the deepest spiritual struggle. The prelude is not the end in itself, but the preparation for a cosmic confrontation in which light and darkness will meet in a decisive way, revealing the magnitude of the battle that is already taking shape. The Great Tribulation is not only a period of pain, but the stage where the most intense spiritual battle in history is exposed. On the one hand, the light that announces redemption. On the other, the darkness that tries to resist with violence. It is like watching a war in which there are no neutral spectators. Everyone is involved. The last seal, when broken, opens the way for this cosmic revelation that divides destinies. This war is not only symbolic, it manifests itself in palpable realities. Nations in conflict, opposing ideologies, societies plunged into chaos. All this is a reflection of this invisible struggle. It's like when a team plays on the field, but behind the scenes, there is a much bigger dispute between sponsors and managers. What we see on the surface is just the tip of a much deeper mystery. In practical life, this confrontation manifests itself in small daily choices. When someone decides to act with integrity instead of giving in to corruption, they are standing on the side of the light. When he chooses forgiveness over vengeance, he participates in the victory of redemption over tribulation. These are apparently simple attitudes, but they carry eternal weight because they reveal which side of the spiritual field one is playing on. It is fascinating to realize that Christ does not enter this battle as someone uncertain about the outcome. From the beginning, victory is already decreed. The darkness roars, but they know that their time is short. It's like watching a movie whose ending has already been written. Even if the conflict scene is intense, the light won't be beaten. This assurance gives the heart hope, even in the midst of the unfolding judgment. And as this clash advances, the signs become clearer and the human clamor stronger. The scenario, which was already loaded, moves towards something greater. The transition between chaos and order, the passage from pain to victory. Because this confrontation does not end on the field of war, but makes room for the arrival of a kingdom that will have no end, establishing an eternal government over all things. From the clash between light and darkness is born the certainty that nothing will be undefined. When the war seems to reach its peak, the promise of an eternal kingdom arises, not shaped by human hands, but established by Christ himself. This government does not depend on elections, coups, or political treaties. It is born as an inevitable outcome of prophecy and as a response to the clamor of centuries. It is the seal that breaks to reveal the final victory. The difference with this kingdom is that it is not sustained by military forces or the manipulation of wealth. It is based on justice, truth, and redemption. While the kingdoms of the earth rise and fall in cycles of glory and ruin, the kingdom of Christ stands as an unshakable rock. It is like comparing sandcastles, which collapse with the tide, to a fortress built on living rock, immune to time and waves. In practice, this changes the way we look at earthly systems. Many place their absolute trust in governments, economies, or leaders, forgetting that they are all transitory. The eternal kingdom invites us to live differently, with hope that does not waver and with values that do not corrupt. It is like someone who invests not only in consumer goods, but in knowledge, faith, and character, riches that span eternity. This kingdom is also a counterpoint to the chaos of the tribulation. As the earth groans under judgment and the trumpets echo destruction, the promise of order and renewal arises. It's like the sunrise after a long, stormy night. The sky, darkened by spiritual warfare, begins to open, allowing us to glimpse rays of a government that will bring definitive peace, a peace that cannot be negotiated, only received, and as that promise draws nearer, the human heart is challenged. Because the arrival of this kingdom is not just a distant spectacle, but an urgent invitation. If the seal announces the final victory, it also warns that there is still an opportunity for repentance before the complete outcome. The call echoes like a living voice, to turn to the Lord before the last act is accomplished. In the face of the revelation of an eternal kingdom, there is also the urgency of a choice. The last seal is not just about judgment, but about opportunity. It's like the final whistle of a game. Until the last second, it is still possible to turn the match around. The call to repentance is that last chance, an invitation made not with imposition, but with love, so that no one will be consumed by the inevitable tribulation. This invitation is marked by silence and trumpets, by fire and incense, by signs that cannot be ignored. It is like someone knocking on the door repeatedly. Those who listen and open experience redemption. Those who refuse are trapped in the weight of judgment. It's not just about intellectual belief, but about a practical surrender that transforms daily choices and shapes the heart for eternity. In everyday life, repentance may seem like a heavy word, but it is simple and liberating. It's like when someone realizes they're going down the wrong road and decides to turn around before wasting even more time. It could be asking for forgiveness, quitting a destructive habit, or even starting over in areas that seemed lost. Repentance is not prison. It is the key that opens to redemption. This final call also brings hope. It shows that God desires not only to judge, but to save. Even when the trumpets sound loud and the mystery of the last seal is revealed, there is still room for reconciliation. It is like the doctor who, even in the face of a serious diagnosis, offers the treatment capable of restoring life. Judgment is not an end in itself, but a path to a greater revelation. And so, The narrative reaches the decisive point. The seal is about to be broken. The history of humanity is moving towards its climax, and the invitation continues to echo. The silence, the trumpets, the incense, the fire, and the eternal kingdom all point to the same truth. There is still time to choose the light before eternity manifests itself in fullness. After all this, it's impossible to look at life in the same way. The last seal, the silence in heaven, the trumpets, the cry of the saints, the fire of the altar, and the confrontation between light and darkness. Everything points to an inescapable truth. Eternity is already in motion. The question is, which side will you choose to be on when judgment reveals itself in its fullness? Now it's time for serious reflection. What areas of your life still need repentance? What have you been putting off, pretending you don't see, but that needs to be put before God today? Have you been living as someone sealed by redemption, or as someone who is still lost in the noise of the world? These are questions that cannot be ignored. Think with me, if the whole sky has fallen silent, how can you go on living distracted? If the trumpets echo judgment, isn't it time to wake up? If the seal is about to be broken, it is not time to hide, but to take a stand. This is your chance to change, to seek the light, to prepare your heart for eternity. And I want to tease you. Are you willing to apply this knowledge? Or are you going to let it run through your fingers like sand? Will you continue to live on automatic? Or will you make decisions that reflect the approaching eternal kingdom? The call is made. Now it's up to you to answer. If this content spoke to your heart, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Because the truth is clear, history has not ended, and the last seal is about to be broken.